All right, so our next speaker is Dr. Jennifer Oakes. Dr. Oakes is currently the program director of St. Joseph's Medical Center, Emergency Medicine Residency Program, and she'll be speaking with us today about the cover letter and the CV. So thank you, Dr. Oakes, for your presentation. You may proceed.
Thank you. So again, I'm Dr. Oakes. I'm the program director of the St. Joe's Emergency Medicine Residency. So thanks for giving me your time and attention. I'm going to try to share my screen here. And hopefully that will work. So a couple of things. I'm going to talk about a cover letter first, and then I'm going to speak about the CV and what you should have as your basic content for the CV. So, in the olden days, we used to actually send out paper letters and everything used to be very formal. And, everyone's seen the movie Legally Blonde and, everything should be pink and scented. But these are the days of the electronic cover letter. And so things can be as formal or informal as, in each individual job sort of requires it to be. If you're applying to fellowship, obviously you're going to be writing personal statements, and ARIS, if your fellowship goes through ARIS, has a very set, formalized way of doing that. If your fellowship or your job is a little less formal than that, you want to sort of take into consideration really where you're applying. More academic centers are going to likely be inundated with a lot of other trainees. So you want to really take that into consideration. So you want to really sort of gauge your audience and where you're applying in terms of how formal do you want this letter to look. If it's a place that you are already familiar with, maybe you've rotated there before, you really know them, you can be a little less formal. I would always err on the side of more formality if you don't know the place you're applying to or you expect to have a lot of competition. Rather than being less formal in terms of writing a cover letter or an introduction letter about yourself. Before you begin a cover letter, things that you want to ask yourself: who am I trying to portray in this letter? What special skills or training do I have to offer? How am I going to make myself stand out from the crowd? And really, what am I looking for as well? Is this job going to fit me, and what do I think they have to offer me, and how do I sort of make that stand out in the letter so that I can tell them that I'm actually a match for this job, and then tailor that letter accordingly. And please feel free to use the chat. I've actually got two computers going here, so I can actually see the chat while I'm doing this. So please just feel free to, or just, kind of raise your hand or jump out and talk. I like the 4-paragraph style. I read a lot of, as the program director, I read a lot of personal statements, really lengthy personal statements. Don't really capture my attention. I like short and sweet. I really want to know kind of who you are, sum it up really nicely for me. Telling me really lengthy stories don't necessarily, more is not always better. Don't really, kind of keep me going. So really kind of sum it up. Tell me who you are, what you're looking for. I want to know, as a potential employer, and I'm sure Dr. Wiederhold could absolutely speak to this, although I think my interview with him did not include a cover letter or any sort of formal application. It was really a phone call, but it's, what am I looking for in this job? Is it full-time? Is it part-time? Why am I looking there? Is it because my family's in the area, or is it because I've always wanted to live in this area because of X, Y, and Z? But again, kind of keep it short and sweet. Describe who you are. What kind of training program were you at? What was really special about your training program? I've got some examples coming up here so you can kind of see what I'm talking about. Was there anything particular about your training that makes you unique or makes you uniquely qualified to work where you're going? If you had any specialty certifications or specialty rotations that you did during your residency that make you stand out, that would be great. Did you do a wilderness rotation you're particularly proud of, or that you really excelled at ultrasound? And, it doesn't necessarily mean you want to do a fellowship in ultrasound, but you really loved it and you did extra rotations in it, and you feel like you really got a great grasp on that, and you're going to really incorporate that in your training. And that's something unique that you can bring to that new practice. Make sure you highlight that as something about yourself. And now I'm not advancing. Come on now. Hang on, sorry, technical difficulties. There we go. Again, describe your special skills, tell your prospective employer why they should hire you, and highlight something from your CV. You know, these employers are getting lots of CVs. They're going to skim them. Make sure that if there's something special on that about you, that you're really pulling that out and putting that forward in that cover letter. And then in paragraph 4, make sure you say thank you for taking the time to read about you. Make sure you're including a way to contact you. Always offer either a phone or Zoom interview. Again, we live in a virtual world now. Some people are still not opening up their hospitals to visits. So make sure that you always offer a way for them to get a hold of you and talk to you. Make sure you proofread. Nothing is worse than grammatical or spelling errors. That is a way to really turn people off. And then really, really, really important, make sure that you are changing the addressee on all of your letters. There is nothing worse than saying, you know, hey, you know, St. Joe's Hospital, and you're actually applying to, you know, Highland. And that person is reading someone addressed to the wrong professor, wrong physician, wrong medical director, wrong hospital. It happens. Not infrequently. Make sure you are being very diligent and detail oriented when it comes to that kind of thing. And if you want to include references, that's totally fine. But make sure that you have contacted those folks and that they know that they are going to be contacted potentially in serving as a reference for you. I've gotten, you know, people who I haven't really spoken to in a couple of years, former residents of mine, former coworkers of mine, and they say, oh, hey, this person put you down as a reference. I'm like, oh, okay. Sure. What are they applying for again? And that is a little bit awkward because I'm unprepared to do that. So make sure you let the people know that you've put them down as a reference. There's a list of words here. It does, and unfortunately, my highlighting did not cross over. Does anybody know what this list of words, why I included this list of words, and why I did that, and what maybe some of them might mean? Somebody, anybody? Bueller. Let's see, I'm gonna pick on participants I know, because I don't know all of you. Let's see here.
I'm willing to make a guess. I don't know if I'm right, but all of them seem to be like action words.
There's a lot of action words there. Good, good. There's some words in there you might want to stay away from. Does anybody know why?
Because they're cliche or overused.
Cliche or overused. Also, they're a little bit more passive. They're also gendered. And we find that some gendered words are used more often to describe females, right? Because can anybody think of a gendered word in this list?
Pleasant.
Mature.
A lot of talking all at once.
I said mature, but I was joking.
Thanks, Jason. So some of them that come up, and I can't highlight it because it didn't.
Like sensitive, that's.
Sensitive is a good one. Yeah, so sensitive is a good one. Dependable is another one, even though, oh, it'd be great to be called dependable, but it's a little bit more passive. So conscientious is another one. So these are things that are a little bit less action and a little bit more passive. So you have to be careful when you're writing letters about other people, and also when you're writing letters about yourself, that you want to make sure that you're using more action words and less passive words, particularly for the females in our group, because it's something that we become used to doing, but we have to just be a little bit more careful about that. And I'm sorry that the highlighting didn't show up because it was useful. Anyway, technical difficulties again. All right, so here's some examples of letters, and just so you can kind of get an idea of what I'm talking about, kind of short and sweet. Who this person is, full-time, they're seeking a full-time academic position in emergency medicine at the main campus. This is who they were. They recently graduated from residency in Boston. It was an academic center. They cared for 100,000 patients a year. So it gives you a little bit about their background, what their training was. They did a lot of things in residency. They have a particular interest in SIM and medical education. So they did additional fellowship training there. They're going to be a strong asset. They're energetic. They taught fellowship, or during their fellowship, they taught junior residents and medical students. So they're going to let this person know that they're interested in still doing that. They're excited to use their skills. And then they thank the person, and they're able to answer questions by phone. They're available by WebEx, and then they've included additional contact information. So again, short and sweet. You learned a lot about this person in just those 4 paragraphs. Example 2. This person only wants part-time employment. They want to be a staff physician. Again, they tell you a little bit in the second paragraph. Again, this is the same kind of background training as in the first person's cover letter. They talk about being interested in ED operations and administration. They have a particular interest in underserved populations. So this is why they're talking about working in a community hospital in the first paragraph there. They talk about something unique in their training where they were in the community engagement program. This is a nod to Dr. Anna Berry. They want to, something that links them back to community medicine for St. Jane's is that they feel that their training integrates them well into the population that they hope to serve as a staff physician. They say that their population fits in with their goals. So again, this is how I'm going to make myself a good candidate for the hospital that I'm looking for. Again, thank them. This is how I'm available, etc. So we tie it up neatly in that 4th paragraph. Example 3, again, full-time staff physician in the emergency department. Again, your background is there. They talk about something unique to them, rural community elective, wilderness medicine rotation. Again, pulling that out of the CV, highlighting it here. It's easy to brush over in a CV when they read 100 of them. You want to take something out that's going to make you look like your unique candidate. Again, highlights in the 3rd paragraph, the strong interest in rural community medicine. You're looking at a hospital that is in a small town in a rural community. So again, you want to highlight why you are a unique candidate and well prepared for the job that you're applying for. And then again, wrapping it up at the end. Any questions about those examples or any comments? No, everybody's gone to sleep now. Okay, awesome. Moving on to the CV. Again, CVs can be, depending on sort of your life course, going into academics, CVs tend to get very lengthy and contain lots and lots of information. And then when you're in the community, you can really make them nice and short and sweet because they don't need to necessarily contain a lot of extra information. So really depending on where your path takes you, really depends on what your CV ends up looking like. Coming right out of residency, you don't really need a lot of extraneous information in your CV. And you often won't really have a really robust CV because you haven't had a lot of time to do a lot of things. But the basic information is really pretty straightforward. So obviously your name, your degrees, your contact information should come first. Your education is going to be second, including your residency, the who, what, where, when, if you've done fellowship, which none of you have obviously yet. And then always remember to include dates. This is really important, particularly if you're going into fellowship or you're going into academics, or anyone that's affiliated with a medical school, even if you're not going to be, even if you're going to be clinical faculty at a place that's affiliated with a residency, simply because a lot of facilities that are affiliated with education, either medical school or residency, will need to enter your data into other databases, and having those dates is super important. So it's really nice to just have that data there. Of course, your licensure and certification, all of your med staff offices are going to need to have this readily available. Plus, it's important to just have that as a running list. It's a really good place. A CV is also a really good place for you yourself to keep track of all of this information on a running basis. Emergency medicine doctors tend to be very mobile. You tend to move around a lot. You may change states. It's a nice place to just keep this as a repository of where I've lived, when my licenses happened, when they've expired, when I need to renew them. And you'll always have that there. And as well as if you need merit certifications. Now, of course, ABEM and ABOM do not require merit certifications, but some hospitals you'll work at, particularly rural hospitals, may still require them. So it is a good place to keep that list current as well. And of course, your employment should be listed there as well. Current positions are most relevant. You can put your previous employment history at the end of the CV, particularly the longer you're out, it can get quite lengthy. I usually only list the last, 2 or 3 places I work and then put others available upon request, because again, the longer you're out, the more places you work, it can get a little bit unruly. Any awards and honors, and then
Hey, Dr. Oakes.
Yes.
Back on the previous slide, I'm just wondering, since none of us have had any actual medical jobs, like as far as like employment, should we even bother putting like, oh, I worked at like McDonald's or something like that? Or is this mostly for like, yeah?
No, only put, relevant only. Yeah. Only put the things that would be appropriate to what you're going to be doing at the, medical level. If you've done something that you feel is really important, if you were, if you've done something like you were a researcher and at the PhD level, and, I think that, for a couple of years, I think that's probably something that you would want to include on your CV. But I think that anything really other outside of that would probably not really be, necessary to include on your CV.
Gotcha. Thank you.
I actually have a question as well.
Sure.
I'm sorry, just really quickly, since a lot of us are applying and we haven't, this is like half a year or a year in advance of becoming board certified. Is that something that, do we put like anticipated date or like? Yeah,
you can put board eligible, and you can put the date for that.
Great, thank you.
Yeah. And then any awards and honors, publications, of course, you want to make sure that you bullet your publications and list them out separately. You don't want kind of like a big, pile of different publications without really understanding what they were. And again, this is a little bit more important if you're going to end up going into academics and you anticipate sort of this becoming a longer list through time. But it is just nice to have things a bit more organized. Any administrative work you do, even if you're going into the community, this is very important to have this, because you will be expected in many community hospitals to serve on hospital committees, to do quality improvement work. This may be part of your incentive compensation for your community, for your appointment in the community. So this is very important to keep track of this kind of work that you're doing. So it is important to have a line item on your CV for these kind of things. Any professional organizations that you belong to, or committees for regional or national organizations that you serve on. And again, at the very end, any other employment history that's not sort of absolutely current, you can put that at the end. And again, as you sort of grow in your career, that may become somewhat lengthy. So you can always put a, as per request, anything that is not really relevant. And then if you like, you can put current interests. A lot of people do choose to do that. If you have some unique hobby that you want to sort of expound upon, make yourself a more, appear a more well-rounded person. People have very interesting hobbies they want to, be able to discuss and Obviously in emergency medicine, we have a lot of people who do a lot of very interesting things. Work hard, play hard is sort of the motto. And so by all means, if you'd like to include that in your CV, it's absolutely appropriate to do so. And then references can certainly come at the end. A lot of people choose not to put references on their CV because they do often change as you move around and change jobs. So you can always put available upon request, and that's completely appropriate as well. If you do include references, usually you'll put about 3. You don't typically need more than that. As you're first graduating from a residency program, typically those references should include your program director. Usually that will also include the current chair or medical director of your department, and then an individual that you know well, especially if you have a subspecialty interest, like you're going into ultrasound fellowship, you'll put the ultrasound director or the ultrasound faculty of your department. But again, make sure that they know that they're serving as a reference. Your program director should know that they're going to serve as a reference for you for pretty much everybody that's graduating. But just make sure that they know that, like, oh, hey, I applied to this fellowship, or I applied to X, Y, and Z jobs. This person's going to email you. The vast majority of jobs will email your reference a sort of pre-made form for them to fill out. Occasionally, they will require an actual letter of recommendation that has to sort of be cut from whole cloth. Sometimes they will actually call. A lot of smaller community hospitals will call. So make sure that you have up-to-date phone numbers. But again, the vast majority will email. So make sure you have both forms of communication available and that are up to date for your references. These are some helpful sites regarding job searches and how to write CVs and personal statements. So I think Dr. Annaberry has a copy of this I sent to her, so we can get this information out to you guys.